first of all, just to remind you, as developers, from a practical point of view, these are aspects of security that we really care about and we should be familiar with as developers. There is the authentication to establish the identity of the user. There is authorization to work out or to confirm what are the privileges the user has. And usually it is role-based. And then we have the confidentiality and data integrity to make sure that data is protected against unauthorized access, either when it is transitioned through the network or when it is at rest in a certain database or a file. So, you know, the security landscape is so large and complex. In here, I'm trying to give you the essence of it, the most important aspects, very practical and kind of the latest way of doing things. So if you remember, on the server side, what do we have on the server side? What the server provides to us? Web API. So our goal is to do what? To protect that web API. Only authorized users should access the resource URLs that the web API exposes. So one way of doing this, there are many ways, or the latest way, the more flexible way of doing it, it's called token-based security. So this token, the basic idea of this token-based security, I think it's nicely shown here. In the browser, the user logs in, typically using username and password. On the server side, the server creates, based on the user information, after we log in, we may go to a database, we look up the user details, we get the user object, and then we create a token out of this user object. And then what we do, we take this token, we return it back to the user. So whenever the user comes back to access any of the web API, what they should do, they should attach the web token we gave them in one of the headers of one of the HTTP headers called authorization. And then the web API will extract the token from the HTTP header, validate that it is valid token, and then if it is valid, it can verify whether the user belongs to the role that is allowed to access a certain URL, and then it will allow them to access that URL. So that is the idea. We log in once, and then we generate this token, and the client can store this token, either in a cookie or a local storage, and subsequently they can just keep on giving it back to the server in subsequent requests. That's the basic idea of these web security tokens. So let me just a quick refresh on how it is done concretely in a concrete example. So what I have here, I'm still kind of finalizing this example. I will be basing it on the Vue.js example. But so far, I only managed to do the server side, but inshallah, you will get the full example very, very shortly. It's my highest priority at this stage. So let me just show you what's going on. Maybe through first showing you the end user experience, and then I'll take you through the code on how this is done. Okay, so this is the first. The first thing is we can go ahead and create a user. So one way of doing it, I have here a service listening at this URL /user/signup, and what this expects, what this service expects, it expects a user object. You can see here, I put my first name, last name, email, and password, and then this will be sent to this URL. When this URL receives this user object, what it will do, it will basically encrypt the password. Remember, the password is plain text. It's not safe to store it as it is in the database. We first encrypt it and then save it into the database. This one, there is nothing really new here. You know how to receive objects from the web API. You know how to store it in the database. The only thing new is how to encrypt the password before you store it. So let me show you this very quickly. So here it is. So I have a service here. I call it sign up. And in this sign up service, the only line that is kind of new is I use this package, Node.js package called bcrypt. It has a simple function called hash, and I give it the password. It will hash it and create a strong, like a hashed password. And then I change the actual plain password with the hashed one. Then here I also assign the role. This user, the role I wanted to assign to them is a visitor role, and then I save it in MongoDB. The next step is the user comes in, we give them a login screen, and we ask them to enter the username and password. Okay, so let me show you now. This is the sign up, and the next step is sign in. So I'm not going to show you the user interface. We just show you the web API. You imagine that we have a screen. The user types their username and password. At the end, we create an object. Here is the object. It has the email as the username and the password that the user has entered. Then I take this object and send it to where? To this URL. Sign up. Nothing here, nothing really new here. It's very straightforward. Now on the server side, what the server will do, will take this user object, it will look up the database, say, do I have any user with this email? And then when I get the user, do the password that the user supplied match with the password that I have in the database? If everything is okay, it means it's a valid user. And I'll get the user object. And the user object will have all the details about the user. Their name, their email, their role, yes? And then what I'll do, I'll take that user object and convert it to a token. And then what I'll do, I send back this token back to the login request as a response to this login request. Then the client needs to store that token, and when they come back, they must give me back that token, otherwise I will not recognize who they are. So the idea here, we authenticate once. Maybe somebody will say, why can't we just store the username and password and every time pass it? It's a big security hole. If you store it locally, somebody can be stolen. It's a terrible idea to store the password and the username. So instead, the user object gets converted to a token, a very simple and clever idea, and you just keep that token and keep passing it back to the server whenever you request other resources in the future. So let me show you. So up to here, there is nothing really fancy. It's just a normal web API request with this object in the body of the request. Now, on the server side, have a look at this. There is sign in. So what I do here, I receive the object, and then I go to my user model. This is a Mongoose model, and I'll say, go to the user's collection and find me a user where the email equal to the email coming in the body of the request. Hopefully everything will go okay. Here I'm just converting it from a Mongoose object to a plain JavaScript object. And then, because remember, the user object here will have an encrypted password. The password coming with the request, the password coming with the request is not encrypted. It's a plain text. So I back to my library, the bcrypt library. I say, please compare for me this plain text password with this encrypted password. It will do the magic, and it will say to me either true or false. There is a match or there is no match. If there is no match, simple. I throw to the user 401 unauthorized access, and the story is finished. Now, if there is a match, what I'll do, I'm not going to send to the requester just true or false. I'm going to send them a token. And this token has all the details about the user. So the way I generate this token, one simple way of generating it, of course, I have the user object from the database, but this user object has a password. I should not keep this password, so I delete it. It also has this _v, I don't need it. Anything I don't need, that I came back from the database, I delete it. Then here is the little trick. Then I take this user object and use this library called JWT, Json Web Token. I will explain what it means. It does not matter. What it does, it takes a user object and converts it to a token. Token is just a string of characters that, yes, the token is not stored on the server. And this is the power of this JSON Web Token. The idea here, if you store it on the server, you need a session. And once you get it into sessions, your scalability will decrease significantly. You try to have a stateless web API. Stateless means requests come, we serve it, we don't remember anything out of it. And this is the power of this. I give you the token, you give it back to me, I can verify it without storing the token I gave you before. Go here and sign in, and I'm giving this username and password, and do send. And then have a look. What's happening here, I get all the details about the user, the JWT token, just to show you that this is just an encoded JSON string. It's nothing really fancy here. And I can paste it here. What you can see here, you see here, it is a string that has 3 parts separated by a dot. The first part is the header. The second part is the actual payload, the actual content of this JSON object. And the third one is a signature. Let me show you now how I can access other API that the server is providing. For example, let me show you here, I send a request to this API, but I don't include the token. I just send the request as it is without including the token. So I'll get an error saying there is no token, this is a protected URL, you cannot access it. You have to give me who you are before I allow you to access it. Yes? Now, for us to communicate the token back to the server, how to do so? We add a header to the HTTP request. I'll go to the authorization. No, this is an old one. So then I paste it, then I send. Then now the server side allows me to get in, allows me to access this web API. So what happens is, on the server side, I receive this token from the HTTP header, and then what I do, I verify that this token has not been exploited or changed somehow. So if I go here and change anything and send, wrong token. You say anybody who accesses this URL, they have to go to pass through this first. So what this function is doing, it will go ahead, the first thing it will do, as you can see here, it will go ahead to the request.headers.authorization. What this line is trying to do? Get in the token. Very good. Now remember, the token has bearer, space, and then the actual token string. Yes? So in here, if there is a token, if there is no token, this will be undefined. This will be skipped. And then I will return to the user 403, no token, or 403, access denied, or something like that. Okay? Now, if there is a token, I just split it using a space, and then access the second element of the array, because when I split, I get an array. I take the second element of the array, and this is my actual token. And all I do, when I do verify, I call my JWT jot. By the way, it is pronounced as jot. I call my jot package and call the function verify. I give it the token. I give it the secret key. And then what it will do, it will basically decode my token. And if everything goes okay, I will get back a user. In here, I can say if request.user.role equal admin, only if the user is admin, allow them to do this. Else, you give them this, for example. Yes, that's it. Here it is. So this one, this route slash is protected route. Before anyone can come to it, I first send them to this function called verify. This function takes 3 parameters: request, response, and next. Okay, so what this function will do, it will extract the token, as I explained before. It will verify that the token is valid. If the token is valid, what will happen? I will reconstruct the object from the token and assign it to request.user. So it is accessible to the next step. The next step is basically I will be back to this. Okay? It's like, this is how I check whether the user is authorized or not. So before I run this function, which will handle the requests coming to slash, I first get the users authorized and check that they are authorized to do so. How do I do this? By calling this function verify. And this function verify reads the token coming with the request, decodes the token. If the decoding works, then we get a user back. Otherwise, we throw an exception to the user saying access denied.